What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. Today's guest has worked in product design, marketing, and sales. His career has focused on flooring and carpeting for hospitality locations and others for almost 40 years. He won the 2022 HIP Award for Product Designer. He is the Vice President of Design at Mohawk Industries, the largest flooring company in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mark Page. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
I am wonderful. I want our readers to know that I furnish hotels. I supply furniture to hotels. There was a brief moment where I tried to do something on a roll,
Sure.
being carpet, and I realized, you know what, I'm much better with the three-dimensional built product, not so much textiles. And it was a really cool thing to I'm a big believer in trying as many things as you can. And then sometimes if you don't try things, you don't know if it's a good fit or not. But I really appreciated my time and limited experience with you and your whole team, because what I realized is textiles and carpet and flooring is a whole different world that has an infinite amount of just things I know nothing about, the unknown unknowns. And there's such a nuance into getting each design right that I just thought it would be really cool to have you on so that you could share your experience of being a product designer, an award-winning product designer, starting off in textile, but now Mohawk is this huge flooring company, I think the biggest in the world, and just wanted to kind of talk to you about your experience. But before we get there, what does hospitality mean to you?
Hospitality means to me several things in my professional world and in my relaxed state. For me, in the professional world, it's a great exposure to what's happening, what's new. I can take inspiration from a lot of what I see there. A lot of the properties I'll visit will be properties that we've designed product for. So we get to go back to that scene of the crime, if you like, where we've created the product, and we get to see what worked and what didn't work in a real sense in terms of design. If I look at it purely, I'm there on vacation. I'm there to unwind. I'm there to get some of the flavor of the local community, what's happening there, and really sort of create a stimulus for me to relax, unwind, and to rest. There's probably a third leg is in the business world where I'm just traveling to be in and out of a meeting with client. I'm just looking at a comfortable bed somewhere that's close that can get me in and out and back on a plane again. So it's several things for me.
And okay, I appreciate that. And if you were to take, because I guess also what I'm intrigued by with Mohawk in particular, in your experience, is how that idea of hospitality in the built environment and designing for that and supplying for that industry, hotels, restaurants, bars, movie theaters, I don't know, wherever. I mean, flooring is everywhere, but if you segment out the hospitality, is there a difference to that industry from your perspective versus the other verticals that you might be in, from healthcare to office to industrial to anywhere else that has floor that's not hospitality? So is it different? How is it different? And does that hospitality industry influence the other segments that are not hospitality?
If I go back to my early career, I spent purely in the hospitality industry for most of my career, albeit the last 12, 13 years that I've been at Mohawk. And that was that I've always felt was a fairly unique environment. I think as we've gone on, and COVID probably accentuated this, the idea that we want to bring in more of an experience, more of a hotel type feel into all aspects of interior built environments. So at Mohawk, I'm more than just responsible for hospitality. It is, as you said, Dan. It's healthcare, it's government, it's workplace, it's aviation, it's everything other than residential is where I'm designing product for. And yet, in almost all, not every one of those ones, but almost all of those, there is a component of hospitality that gets brought into the built environment. It's the idea of something a little bit more of a creative statement as you enter that building. It's a place for employees within that space to go and relax, network, unwind, settle in a community with others, where that hospitality environment acts as that sort of tie together, where we bring people into that space. So I would say yes. I would hesitated on schools for a moment there, because I don't know that hospitality influences schools, but you probably could say, yeah, there's an aspect there that even in a school environment, hospitality type environments can be created.
For the listeners that don't know, in the United States, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I know just a little, just enough to be slightly dangerous here. But most of the flooring in the United States is done in northern Georgia, and you're in Dalton. Is that a correct statement or not?
Correct. Yeah, North
Okay.
Georgia. Yep.
In the 706 area code. I got that one right too. Yep. So I think there was this other element of hospitality, because when I went down and got to experience the corporate offices and then a couple of the different mills from, I don't know, like whatever, the Durkin, what is that, CYP, to other tufted, like, I'm getting out over my skis here, but I think that it's like this huge industrial, I don't know, outpost that makes flooring, but then from a hospitality perspective, just making me feel welcome, educating me as far as like how all of this goes. It must have been more 10 years ago or more. So I've forgotten more than I've ever known, but it's, I don't know, that just being able to go and make sense of that machinery and how the things are made and how you schedule production, and how does that level of hospitality, as far as making others feel welcome into this place, apply to you, and as you build your teams and how you interact with other teams, not just design but also production within the Mohawk family?
It's challenging at times. So I mean, if I go back to when the Earth was flat, and the UK, where I came from, my small hometown, Kidderminster, had an Axminster woven industry, very labor intensive. As costs of manufacturing within the UK go up, and a lot of that industry has gone away. There isn't really a carpet manufacturing base in my hometown anymore. But if I look at the US, in Dalton, tufted technology, which is sort of came on quite dramatically here. It requires much less labor. It's a lot less labor intensive. Manufacturing may argue with me around here, that's the case, but it is harder to make those things overseas to where you can reduce your cost that much, that importing that product back into this country makes any sense. So the industry here tends to flourish.
And just so I'm clear, and that's because to do the tufting, or the technologies that develop to do the tufting in Dalton, it's very capital intensive to build these machines. But once these machines are built, obviously there's still people involved in the process, but you wind up not competing with a lot of the high cost or low cost of labor places, where they might not invest in invest the capital in all of that machinery, because they have lower cost of labor that can do hand tufted, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. The manufacturing equipment, the engineering behind what we do, a lot of that is made locally. So Chattanooga, a lot of the tufted technology that the industry uses in Dalton is manufactured there. It's all very compact. For design, where I'm at, it's a small community here that is influenced by what it sees around them. The challenge I have in product design is, how do I attract talent to a small mill town community? If I look at a designer in New York, they are, for the most part, they can be subconsciously influenced by fashion, window displays. They've got bigger aspirations. They may be a little bit more focused on trend and future activity. You don't see that in the Dalton area. There's not a lot of high-end malls, there's not a lot of high-end stores. Yet I've got to try and bring young talent into this area. So I'll spend a lot of time building relationships with colleges, directly with the students, and try and get them to realize that there are viable opportunities in flooring design, and that they can get exposure to those parts of the world with influence, but they got to live here. They got to live at the mill. They've got to be close to where we design and produce our samples. So they can live in both worlds. They've got to live here, but we can put them in situations where they can be influenced. And they're building products that are cutting edge and on trend, the sorts of things that our major metropolitan partners want to buy. So, but it is a challenge. It takes a lot of work for the business, for me, for those that work around me, to make sure that we're engaged with the employee base that we want to bring into this market. That doesn't mean that on the manufacturing side is necessarily the same thing. But if we're looking at design trend and influence, I have to have a little bit more outreach to bring those people in.
One of my favorite I get so much feedback on doing these podcasts and talking to really interesting people, such as yourself. But one of the most rewarding or impactful channels of feedback that I get back are from the younger listeners who might be in college, at a hospitality school or a design school, or freshly out of college, maybe in an internship or in something else, but they're exploring what hospitality is all about. And I find that so rewarding because they'll reach out to me on LinkedIn or email and just say, "Oh wow, I didn't know I could do X or Y, or I didn't even know that thing existed." As you're building those relationships with these learning institutions, I would assume, and just talking to other designers, how do you know when you've kind of won, when you've made that connection? Like, how do you know when it's right? Do you have an example of that where it's like you might have turned on a light in someone's head that they weren't aware of?
Oh yeah, it's not for everybody. We have a lot of people come and visit the design center here, the Light Lab, and we'll do a lot of presentations. And I'll go to colleges and we'll do presentations. And you look at a classroom of 30, 40, 50 students, and they're either playing on the phone. Some of them are paying attention, or they just got blank looks on their faces. You start to show them what we do, the extent of creativity in what we do. You do, not in everyone, but you do start to see light bulbs come on. People realize that this is an opportunity that wasn't presented to them prior to my engagement, or they didn't think of. I think a lot of interior design, textile students, they will look at fashion or fabrics. They won't necessarily think about carpet. For as much as carpet can be a fairly bold statement in some hospitality settings, it's not something you'd necessarily stare at and absorb. We do. And my wife, being an interior designer, we'll hold hands when we go through a space. She's looking at everything else around the room, and I'm looking at the floor. We get through the space without walking into things.
Look up, Mark. Look up.
Yeah, look up. Yeah, get off the floor. So, yeah. Not everybody, but it is interesting to see that those actually switch on, and that those will actually engage with you fully with plenty of questions, or after the event, or that will send you a text or an email to say, "Hey, I'd like to be a part of an internship program," or work. When can I come and see the space? So it takes a special person. A lot of the older textile designers that we've got here, including me, I don't know any of us expected to be in flooring. None of us really thought that's where we'd eventually be.
That's really interesting. So let's do generally speaking for you and your other colleagues there, where did you think you would be in the world of design?
So I'm a fourth generation employee into flooring. In my hometown, there were very few manufacturers there, and you left, you graduated, and you ended up in your hometown at the biggest single employer. I didn't want that. I wanted to run away from that. I think I'd be everything else but be in flooring. And I ended up getting sucked in, and you enjoy the income, and the income plays for nightclubs and drinks and girlfriends and everything else. And then you just become reliant on it. And then you realize that the exposure you get there, you're not just sat behind a desk creating things. You get to meet people. You get to meet with really creative interior designers that have some great ideas and some really bad ideas. But they explain to you what they're looking for, what they want you to create. And it's that partnership between the interior designer and us that becomes very fluid. Other designers I got here, I mean, I think my destiny was sealed when I was born into my hometown. I'll be honest. At some of the old designers here, it's in some respects, it's almost as they've accepted a job for its benefits and a steady income, but they're really sculptors or they're painters, or they like to express their creativeness outside of work in the medium that they really flourish in. But coming to work every day is pays the bills and the income. That's a lot of the designers here. We have 17 designers that live outside of here in the major metro markets, New York, Vegas, LA. And that's a slightly different breed because they do live in the environment where our clients are, and they're working in tandem, creating those things, and they're influenced by the materials around them. In a lot of those cases, those designers are people that wanted to go into textiles.
You said something that resonated with me where it was, you're designing some incredible things and then some not so beautiful things, right? Something that I've noticed through my career is in doing custom furniture, really being focused on that. Um, Jokingly, I say, I've lost all sense of like taste and aesthetic sometimes because I become so focused on executing someone else's vision and making sure that we're picking up what's important to them. And yeah, we do some incredible things. We do some, if I really step back and look at it, they're like, wow, what are they thinking? But they're happy. And I get joy out of creating whatever it is and making sure that they're happy, because that when they light up is when I light up. Do you feel similar to that with all the custom and then the running line things that you have as well?
Yeah. I mean, I have clear taste in what I want to see. Um, and it's nice when a client will go along and they believe in you, and what you create is what they want. There are plenty of times where my taste isn't quite good, and I'm designing for someone else's needs, and yeah, their end result is actually better than I would have gone. Um, it's also a commercial business. We exist to provide product, make a sale, stay in business. So we have to accept criticism of our work, both internally and externally. So when we're creating product, running line product, every executive around me is a designer, or they claim to be, and they've got influence and they've got a decision, and we have to sell up, and we have to sell down. But good, bad, or indifferent, ugly or pretty, at the end of the day, there's a sales transaction there that has to be fulfilled. So we have to accept criticism. We have to accept that someone may not have my taste, but they're prepared to place an order and move forwards. So not everything we do is pretty in a custom world. Where we try and have a stronger influence is to make sure that when we're creating product, that we are trying to solve a client's problems. So if you want to buy a particular carpet, you don't want to put a white carpet into a restaurant. Yeah. So you're going to rely on my expertise to say, ooh, no, you shouldn't do that. This is why. But if you want to do something similar, let's design into that product certain characteristics. So maybe it's a specification, maybe it's a type of styling, maybe it's a level of color of contrast that can help to build a product that's going to perform better in those spaces, whether it's pretty or ugly. It is on us to make sure that we steer our clients into a product visual and category that is going to look good. It's going to make them look good in front of their clients. And it's actually going to support the life cycle of that product, which is all important, right? You want to make sure that at the end of life cycle, that client goes, that Mohawk product lasted 10, 20 years. I want to go back to Mohawk. So in a design sense, we have that responsibility in us to make sure that we guide.
Mark, when was Mohawk founded?
Mohawk was founded almost 150 years ago, so 1878.
Wow.
which is a long time for any US manufacturer.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked that, I'm looking like, for those of you watching on YouTube, I assume those are, that's past product behind you in, or that's like your running line
Oh yeah,
of
yeah,
materials behind you.
yeah, yeah.
So in the past 150 years, I'm just curious because the intellectual property and designs that you have, like in the dustbins, like of your, I don't know, you're probably storing them somewhere, if not behind the wall, the older ones. How often do you go back and dust those off and look at what's there? Like I'm imagining like Raiders of the Lost Ark when they go into that big, huge warehouse of crates. Do you ever go back and look at the old designs and and bring things back?
Uh, Occasionally. A lot of the older carpets that existed back then, actually before then, are very traditional. Those styles have long since gone from modern architecture. We still see them in a custom sense. We see them relevant to older buildings, older architecture, where the integrity of that structure is they're trying to maintain that look. Most modern carpets, not so much. But back in the 1800s, even 1700s, patterning, styling, numbers of color there were a lot more intricate, a lot bolder. Um, you just don't see those anymore. We are almost now at a sense where we want a tactile product on the floor, but it almost to be not the focus. Now that's not true of every segment. Some segments more so than others, but we are far more tactile and minimalist in a lot of our products now than we are high contrast, heavy patterning, more traditional. But it's an inspirational place to be. And a shocking story. My original, the original manufacturer I used to work for in the UK started in 1783.
What are they called?
Brintons.
Oh, Brinton. Okay, I've heard of them. Great.
So that they started in 1783, and their archive there was jacquard papers, all hand painted. It's where I started my career. Everything little tough was hand painted with a paintbrush. Shockingly, when I first joined there, they actually ran out of space to store all those painted pieces. So we went through 2 years. We went through photographing them onto glass slates, glass slides, which a lot of them fell off shelves and got broken over the years. But that's so that they could burn the papers to create space. So a lot of those hand painted papers that would go back to the late 1700s just got burnt to create space for other things. Now we look at that now and we go, that's shocking. Any one of those hand painted papers may have taken an artist weeks, months to create, and then we just had this sort of scant disregard for them at that time. Today we're all about preservation, and we want to be able to show those things. And Mohawk's archive, we have it tucked away. We do pull it out. We take people to see it. We would like to have plans to really expose that and put that on public display. And
But you have to be careful because you don't want people to find the Ark of the Covenant there, because and unleash the unlimited power that it may hold.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But that was the reality of the modern world. We didn't value those things as much as we would do now.
I bet, like, to read. I mean, I bet you could create a museum of that, and really think about how that's all presented, because that catalog and the history it's gone through, from just the, I guess, the advent of kind of like the railroad, or maybe just after that, and into like the whole history of the United States as we've seen it and all the change that's happened. I think it would be really interesting to tie that back to what we were all walking on through all of that, you know? Um, one question I have is, as for instance, living in the New York area and just seeing LaGuardia is now a beautiful airport, for instance. Um, but I'm seeing most of the larger airports and really public areas where there's a lot of traffic, a lot of foot traffic. Um, More and more people are walking through these places and, like, I don't know, they're wearing out carpet or not. What's the biggest technological, I guess, improvement or innovation that you've seen in the flooring space as it pertains to carpet, in your career? Because I'm going into these places, there's more thousand. many, many more people walking through these things, but the carpet just never seems to wear out.
Yeah. The my at Brintons, they were a wool manufacturer. In the US, the carpet industry here is pretty much nylon. So you've got a fiber type there that's going to wear a long time. In a lot of cases, the fiber is going to withstand fashion. So it's hard to create something that is going to last that 20, 30 years. The life cycle of a carpet, if it's maintained well, it's got to maintain it. That you're creating something that is going to look good in 20 years. In a lot of cases, people are taking carpet out because they want a new look, they want to renovate, and that requires changing the styling and the color palette and so on. Otherwise, the carpet would last for a lot longer. But it comes down to maintenance as well. People that do put in the time to spot clean and clean will have a carpet that looks good right to the end of its life cycle. Not everyone does that, and that can be a challenge in a lot of built environments. Innovation in fiber, Duracolor tricore, so it's a triangular hollow core through the middle of the nylon, which creates some architecture. And then
within the filament, there's there's a geometric form.
And it's amazing. Under a microscope, as you extrude, you look through the core, you actually have a triangle, a trilobal structure, which is sort of architecturally.
And is that extruded or is how? Oh wow!
Yeah, but it gives strength to the nylon, so it helps the nylon architecturally stand up. It wants to stand up. It's hard to push it over. And then you use cationic fibers that in our brand we call them Duracolor. There's very few manufacturers that have a Duracolor type product anymore. But it's built to push away stains. So it's actually hard for a stain to stick. If you think of a magnet, north to north, they want to stick together, right? Actually, north to north, they want to repel. South to north, they stick together. In a cationic fiber, you actually create a north to north environment where the stain and the fiber just naturally repel each other.
Oh, like holding magnets up.
The stain. The stain just can't grab hold and it tends to dry and fall out and you vacuum. The use of recycled plastic bottles in backing materials.
Oh, so that's actually something I wanted to ask on the sustainability side. When you said when it's time to renovate and you take out all of that nylon, I guess it would be the nylon. It could be. Walk us through the process. I'm like, how does that get recycled and turned into new filament or fiber? And is that the same process that you would do for plastic bottles?
Yeah, there are two types of fiber. Nylon would be one. If I look at PET, which is plastic bottle material, on several parts of our business, that is a converting a plastic bottle, and we've got our own proprietary technology for that. It's easier to take that and re-extrude that into a fiber. And even the blue caps, green caps, those can be extruded back into a product type as well. So in plastic bottle world, we're one of the world's largest recycler of plastic bottles into flooring products. Nylon can be a bit trickier, but there are capture partners around the country that we connect people to on our recovery program, and they'll take that material back, and then we start to process that back into other products.
And do they do that domestically?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's super cool, because one of the things, and just having been to Dalton and seen your facilities, and then we have all the talk of tariffs right now. You guys must be like, I think what's cool about flooring, the big flooring companies within the US, is they're kind of immune to tariffs, right? Because everything, all the inputs, and you're making it there. So with all this tariff talk, what are you guys thinking there at Mohawk? Just like, okay, whatever, we're here.
For domestic carpet, all the raw ingredients are here. We make our own chips, we extrude our own nylon, make the fiber and so on. So, if the industry, if the hospitality industry and commercial workspaces, if that area of our business is buoyant, we're buoyant. Tariffs wouldn't make any change to our world. It is probably going to affect people's willingness to invest in new buildings, new properties, renovating. I think that's probably going to hold cash back. But as a business, yeah, where we're making things domestically, we're in good shape. Now we're a global manufacturer, so there are things that we make that we export, and there are things that we import. We can flex where we need to make things more domestically. We can flex fairly quickly. So I think we're in a pretty unique position for us. And then our other businesses around the world are generally making product for those markets as well. So our business in Belgium is making carpets and resilient products for the European market. So again, that they can be somewhat immune to some of the tariff conversation. I don't know that it's Mohawk directly that gets affected, other than it's all those customers that we sell product to. Their decision making is stalled until they can see a clearer path ahead.
Hey, everybody. We've been doing this podcast for over 3 years now. And one of the themes that consistently comes up is sustainability. And I'm just really proud to announce that our sponsor, Berman Falk Hospitality Group, is the first within our hospitality industry to switch to sustainable and recyclable packaging, eliminating the use of styrofoam. Please check out their impact page in the show notes for more info. So as you're speaking there, it's getting me thinking. And I think one of the unique things about Mohawk, because you're in every different vertical, but you're not working in residential, but Mohawk is in residential for sure. That's not in your purview. So that's really interesting to me, because if I go to a hospitality trade show, let's say you'll be exhibiting there, or many of your brands will be exhibiting there. And if I look at the directory or look at all the companies, most of the companies that supply custom anything into the hotel industry are probably from a $5 million a year revenue company making widgets, some kind of a widget, to maybe $100 million a year, right? It's a difficult business that has margins that are not the best when with respect to making product. Schedules are really hard. It's just a hard business. What's interesting to me about flooring and Mohawk is that you are in all of those other channels, making different margins in the other verticals. What types of challenges, like what makes hospitality difficult for you, and from your perspective, in contrasting it to all of the other verticals that Mohawk is in?
80% of probably what we do in the hospitality industry is going to be custom. Custom carpets, you're looking at the dye injected, the Definity, the CYPs, tufted rooms. It is a heavy use of design resource and sampling,
which drives up your cost of goods, right?
It drives up costs. So, the more design work I do, the more design hours, the more designers, the more samples, the longer it takes one of our clients to say, that's it, it's good to go, let's place that order. Those are significant costs, and those are costs that we carry for good and for bad. I don't know that in a lot of cases, a lot of our clients understand, a sample is going to cost $200, and 30 to 40, $50 to ship. And, as soon as you've ordered 30 or 40 of those samples, it's a lot of money. I have, in some parts of my career, had the opportunity to point that out to clients and say, look, you've just spent 50 grand on samples here for a 250-yard custom job. We're all going to lose some money on this thing. But that requires a lot of labor. It's a very complex process. It is difficult to manage. If it's a small volume job, there's perhaps some more money to make, but you can lose that profit very quickly on sampling costs. And if you get into large volume opportunities, there's generally a bid conversation there. There's usually other competitors. We all love volume, keeps the plant going. But margins tend to be tighter. And you
in hospitality.
In hospitality, yeah, you don't. There's not a lot of margin there for slippage. If you screw something up, get it wrong, you're late on delivery. What little margin you've made is you can lose very quickly.
But do you agree with, like, if you step back, or when you walk into the Vegas show or the BDNY show, and you look at all the companies that are there, from interior to exterior, no one's doing over $2 billion in sales like you are, or maybe one other company. I don't even know. It's probably another flooring company, right?
Yeah. We're globally as a manufacturer, we're probably something close to $11 billion. Now that's
11 billion. Oh, wow.
90% of that is residential sales. And that's all public information. There's nothing unusual there. We're a lot smaller than that, clearly, on the hospitality side, but we are one of the biggest players in hospitality in the US market by far. And we'd love to grow, but when you're number one, number two in the hospitality flooring industry, it is harder to get to number one or to hold that position. So we're always having to challenge ourselves with new things, and it's a design driven business. We create a lot of collections throughout the year to provide stimulus for our clients. And my ideal is that our clients look to us for innovation, for new styling, as being the specialists, as being the trend forecasters. We want them to come to us first to say, "What have you got that's new?"
And how much revenue did you say you were doing? 11 billion?
We're about 11 billion.
That's great. So I was, while you were talking, because I was just trying to get my head around the order of magnitude, it must have been in the month it was 2 billion. Or yeah, that's so insane. And
yeah, it's a monster of a business.
It's unbelievable.
Living here, it's hard to get my head around it. But you go into a warehouse full of product, and you mentioned it, I think, before the call, the Indiana Jones. You walk the Ark of the Covenant's tucked away on the shelf. I've been to Mohawk warehouses where there is just acreages of material. But that's that week's shipment. That's going out the door. The industry is huge.
Another thing that really fascinated me was, okay, you're working on a custom design.
Yeah.
And let's say it's going to go through the CYP machine. I think this was Durkin related, right? So it would be a CYP machine. And I was just amazed. And that's not just hospitality, right? You're running other channels through there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So what was really cool to me is you're going through this design. Let's say you get everything approved. The backlog on that machine is just unbelievable, because then you're like, okay, that'll be ready in like, I don't remember, 6, 8, 12 weeks, but you just slot in that design and then it's in there. Whereas in the furniture side of things, it's much more lumpy. Like, just once everything is approved, then you have to go into the factory and fit into there. But it's not one machine. It's hundreds or thousands of bodies that are touching this and putting it together and I was just very fascinated by the amount and level of technology and automation that I saw just in the Durkin machines.
Yeah. It can be feast or famine. There are certain times of the year where there's more activity. One big order can soak up capacity very quickly. So we love those big orders. We love the things that we can make with over and over and over, the big volume jobs. But one big order can really stuff the plant up very quickly. Now we've got a lot of equipment, so it takes a lot of that activity to really stuff us up. But it can be feast and famine in some worlds. The thing that's brilliant with Mohawk is we manage our cash very well, and that if we need to go out and buy a new piece of equipment, we need to expand capacity, and it makes sense to do that, and there's a good payback, we can do that. In other flooring manufacturers, some of the smaller guys, it is harder. The margins aren't there. The business isn't as sustainable, and they don't have the cash to reinvest. And you have to keep ahead of technology in this game. So if you can't reinvest in yourself, the future looks very bleak.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're in a really good spot where we manage our cash really well.
I want to go back to your origin story in England.
Aha.
How did you, what brought you to the United States? Why leave where that was like, you were 8th generation, or I don't know, multiple generation. I don't know.
Fourth generation.
Okay, whatever. I tend to inflate things. So 4th generation. What was the moment where you said, you know what, I'm going to go give the United States a try?
That's probably deep and psychological, that one. There was a moment in my life that it was just right to do. And getting away from hometown was the right thing to do at that time. I probably should leave that there, unless we've had a few drinks. But
okay, I'll take you up on that one.
So I ended up in Los Angeles, and you imagine a small hometown, domestic, manufacturing base. Going from there to Los Angeles, gosh,
And what year was that?
that was 1994.
Wow. And where were you where were you working when you moved there in
That
94?
was Brintons.
Brintons.
So Brintons was probably the first to instigate a field designer strategy where we almost abolished the design studio and we sent our designers out into the world.
I was an intern in 1995 and 6 at Hirsch Bedner in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So I'm sure you were in the office.
We were on 20th and Olympic. We were just around the corner from
Oh,
Hirsch Bedner's
wow.
office.
And they were the biggest and the best back then. You were probably in there every day.
All the time.
Wow.
And their business changed. So I moved to the States. It was for as hard as we worked. We probably worked harder in the US than I'd ever worked in my entire life. But living in California, driving along PCH every morning to get to the office, Baywatch was being filmed at 7 a.m. on the beach. It was vacation all year long.
Mm.
And every moment of my life there was a new experience. And then later in my career, I moved to Las Vegas, where most of our activity most of the volume in hospitality on the West Coast tends to be. That was a different world. Being exposed to Vegas and all the craziness there is the stories that you could talk to forever about living in Vegas.
I have a question for you on the Vegas side of things. What's from a business perspective, like what's the best part or the most profitable, what tends to be the most profitable flooring order in, let's say, a large format casino? Is it the casino floor, the corridors, the guest rooms?
Okay, so I would say area rugs and walk-off mats tend to be good margin business. Guest rooms tend to be high volume, repetitive stuff. In most jobs in Vegas, there are bid situations. Most jobs, there's more than one manufacturer chasing the same opportunity. So big volume jobs, margins really small. Small volume jobs don't tend to go to bid. The intellectual property of the design is protected. Margins on the smaller jobs, small unique jobs where it's just you, then that's where you can make some money. The big jobs just keeping the plant going, just keeping everything ticking over.
I think what's interesting to me in doing custom furniture for guest rooms, that's one of the largest components of the room, right? It could be anywhere from 35 to 45%. And oftentimes designers are instructed to just do to bid. Will find people that can do it, that can fit, that have experience doing this. What I found on the textile side that's really intriguing to me, and I think this is the tremendous value add that you and your teams all over have, is once you start working on that artwork and you do that IP, the intellectual property, and you get specified, it tends to get purchased. Is that a valid statement or not?
Yeah. It takes some time. If you're manufacturer A and manufacturer B wins the opportunity and they've got to duplicate, well, copyright's your friend, right? Intellectual property is going to help to protect you. You can't offer a knockoff. It has to be a very different alternative. And at purchasing stage, the interior design time and investment's already done. People don't have the design hours to go back into it and start the process all over again. In some of the bigger jobs, I've seen people will bid it first against a set of criteria, and then it's awarded and then designed. And that's probably a smarter way to go. As a manufacturer, you really want to get yourself locked in with a particular design, and then it's an easier process. We're still respectful of price. You'd never want to gouge anybody, so we're competitive. But when you own the intellectual property, you feel that you've got a bit more of an opportunity. And in a lot of cases, people do respect that you've put a lot of design time and sampling into it. So you've got a little bit more leverage. You're awarded because of that.
Well, I was also surprised in going through the different strike-offs and the different iterations of design where, if I'm doing a wood finish sample, yeah, it could look different this way or 90 degrees, like vertical, horizontal, or if I bring it outside. But I was just amazed at the nuance of a woven or tufted sample, or if it's cut and looped, and just how light hits it, how when it bends or does any, like there's such a, I don't even have the words to describe, but it's so nuanced and infinitely more complex, I think, than something three-dimensional.
Yeah, it's all a tactile experience. I would never buy something. I'd never buy a carpet over the internet, just looking at a flat digital image on the screen. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but you kind of got to touch it and feel it. Um, Creating it with different fibers, with different sheens on different machines. It's a complex experience. It's something a lot of if you're not a carpet designer, it's hard to do.
Yeah. What do you think for all the different areas, the rooms, the corridors, the casino floor, or whatever you may find in hospitality, which one in your mind takes the most iterations from a strike off perspective to get it approved? Which area?
Generally, those areas that have more high profile visibility. So in a casino, big profile, big designs, it's pretty prominent. There is more time spent there generally to get it right than it might be in a corridors or in a guest room. But you're starting to get into areas where the design is less complex, less visible, less
Up
use
in
of
the
color.
up in the rooms, let's say. So interesting, and I hear this anecdotally, but in the casino floors, there's such a psychological aspect to the design, right? For just wayfinding, but also to kind of keep the people in the gambling pits, right, at the tables. Can you share what's some of the thinking around there? And when you're doing a design, does it go through a psych? Is there a psychologist involved, or is it just people's vast experience in gaming that they're like, oh no, let's do this? Like anecdotally, or I guess actually, how do you take that psychological component into those large format designs?
There's some suspicion in there as well. So at my career in Vegas, I probably did, I don't know, 60% of the casinos I designed carpet for over the years that I was there. You never design animals into a casino carpet. Bad luck.
Oh wow.
For some cultures, those can be bad luck. Certain colors were bad luck. You are right. There are no clocks. There are no windows in casinos. The carpet's generally going to be brighter. It just adds to more stimulus. We want to keep people awake, gambling into the early hours of the morning. It used to be back in the day when we used to use coins in the machines for the casino. If you dropped a coin on the floor and you couldn't find it because the carpet was just so darn busy, that was the casino's money. If you walked away, they'd pick it at the end of the night.
Oh my god, I had no idea.
There were things like that. Then you got to start thinking, okay, people are drinking late into the evening. There are a lot of spills. There may be cigarette
Mm.
burns and activity in the floor. So you've got to look at the types of styles and the contrast of colors. There's a whole bunch of things. One of my first casino designs I did, and we took it right the way through, past the interior designer to be approved by the client, was it was the Belle of New Orleans. It was a riverboat, and they'd actually taken an American flag and they draped it around sort of a leather belt into a carpet design. It looked beautiful. But then the client said this would be terribly bad to have people walking on the American flag.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, gosh, yeah, you're right. You're right. So for over a career, you build up some of these things you shouldn't do
Mm.
scenarios, and yeah, they were absolutely right. So we changed it to I think we changed it to a British flag or something like that. But we changed it so that it wasn't the American flag anymore.
So with all those surprises that you got within the hospitality space in your textile design, was there any one in particular that changed your design process?
Yes, yeah, but I mean, there are many. One I always tell people that was it probably opened my eyes a little bit. Edwards Theatres in California. I don't know if they're still there. They were an independent brand when I first did the design work for them, but they had a series of 20 or 30 theatres. They had issues during the day and at weekends. A lot of the people that managed the property, the spills, the stains, the cleanup work, were students. And if someone spilt a bucket of popcorn or a Coke on the floor, that's a huge area that's got to be cleaned up. A lot of the students just wouldn't clean it up. So it became unsightly. So they said, okay, let's do this. Let's take 70% of the color of the carpet and let's make it the same color that Coke dries to. And then let's take some yellow tufts and let's sprinkle them around in a pattern there so that it looks like popcorn. And as we went through building the carpet, it was a very organic carpet with some structural shapes in there as well. But we built into that all those components of stain and performance, those things that would look dirty and unsightly. And once it was installed, and every single day of the week throughout the year, it looked like the cleanest carpet you'd ever seen.
You would just stick to it when you're walking.
You would stick to it, yeah, but you built those components of camouflage into it. So for an audience that uses those spaces, it was like, you know what, this is a well-maintained property. It was just well thought through design, thinking through all the performance issues that you were going to experience in that space. And it was like, that makes perfect sense. And then they would come back and they would clean it, hot water extract it, frequently anyway. But just day to day, there was some thought process there that helped to create a better looking product. And at the end of the day, 10 years, 20 years into the life cycle of that product, when it came out, I thought it looked great. They just changed it because they changed the style. But it was designing for the performance needs of that space. And that's something I will stress to clients and any designers that we hire is you need to think through these things. Don't put a very tight checkerboard into a carpet design because the spill is round. It's just going to magnify the look of that spill. So things you would like to do, best not to.
Okay, I love this train of thought because, I've been doing custom furniture for, 20 something years. I always think, oh, well, actually, I don't think this anymore, but I feel like I've seen everything and I'm still surprised. So with Mohawk being around for 150 years, obviously you're not there for all 150, but you think you've seen everything in a two-dimensional plane, right? But I'm sure you're still surprised. So what's the most recent big surprise that you've had where you thought you've seen everything?
Oh, I mentioned earlier about the fiber with a hollow core and it pushes stains away. I can't remember what property it was now, and it's probably good that I don't know either because I'm sure they were very embarrassed. But they had a semi-white carpet with some pattern in a high roller suite, and the guests that used that space got a bit excited one day and had a bit of a wild party with some chocolate cake. And literally, it must have been a whole chocolate cake was just smushed into the walls and the flooring, and this carpet was like a murder scene.
Oh boy, I wish that could have been fun if we were there.
and because of the fiber type that we got, we were able to just hot water extract that sugar and Coke and everything else out of it, and we restored it back to being what it was. And that was earlier on in my career when I started working at Mohawk. And it's like, you know what, just in fiber innovation, that is incredible that you can take this horror scene and restore it back to what it was brand new. But that had been someone's crazy experience. It must have driven the hotel crazy.
Wow.
Because, of course, they've got someone else that wants to use that room within 24 hours. So,
okay, so then that begs the next question. So you and your team are designing everything. You have the factory or the mill and the machines making the things.
yeah.
Where are those scientists that are coming up with these new filament, like in the lab? Like, are those people that are just out there working at DuPont or whatever that are figuring this stuff out, or does Mohawk have their own series of scientists that are kind of pushing the envelope in there?
For the most part, we've got R&D that's just actually below me. There's a lab area that's a floor down from where we're at right now. So we'll work with them fairly closely when we're coming up with new innovation in fiber types and materials. And that's where our testing's done as well. So if we're testing what's going wrong with a product or what, something else out there, it's all downstairs. So that helps me in development to work with the latest materials, latest fiber, latest dye products, design them here, and then it goes downstairs to another area where we actually make those samples as well. So it's all contained in this one space. That there is innovation that happens out there in the private sector. People will come to us and we'll dig around and we'll find them those things that we want to buy into, or just buy that business for its IP.
There we go, Mohawk. We just acquire you for your IP. There we go.
Where it makes sense, right?
Check out this balance sheet. We got you. Come on board. Wow, that's really exciting. And then when you're looking at companies out there on an M&A, from an M&A perspective, do they ever bring you, the head of design, in to talk about these things or to get your feeling, or is it totally different? I'm just curious the role that design plays in the overall strategy of the company?
I'm probably the last person you want to bring in. I rarely. I mean, if you're looking at acquisitions, no, we wouldn't get bought in. Once the acquisitions happened, and then we've got to take that material that they make and convert it into a product. We tend to get involved then. There have been occasions where I've been brought in and we've had a chat and we reviewed things and decide whether it makes sense. But it wouldn't be my decision to buy.
So from a design perspective, maybe this is a better question. From a design perspective, what's a really exciting recent acquisition that Mohawk made and why?
VPI in Sheboygan, Wisconsin.
Sheboygan.
It's a homogeneous tile business that we bought a few years ago, and it's Sheboygan. I actually love it up there. At certain times of the year, I'd never go there in the winter, but it's actually quite a nice little environment. 2 hours drive. I think it's 2 hours drive outside of Chicago, but it's a small business and very hands-on in what it makes. The design process was very comfortable. And we will be launching a new line with them in July that I think is very innovative.
And your team has helped create that line?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was a business that we bought that I had to get educated very quickly, get up there and find out how they do it. And there are things that we do in the carpet industry, areas where we control our creative whims for the benefit of creating better, more efficient commercial processes. That we applied some of our best practices in the carpet industry to the manufacturer we bought to make things more efficient, reduce waste, create a better looking product. So we've applied some of those things. So we've taken what was a reasonably profitable business and we've applied our strategies and thinking and processes now to make them a really profitable business.
Wow.
So in recent years, as one of our more recent acquisitions on the commercial side, that's been a really smart acquisition. It really has.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mohawk has 150 nearly years under their belt. You less. As you're looking forward, what's exciting you most about what you see in the future?
Gosh, seeing us grow, we are a big player in the commercial market. In some segments, not so much. There are certain segments within our business that we have the opportunity to grow a lot more into. Some other segments where we own a good chunk of that business. Growth there is slightly smaller, but you imagine everything we do outside of residential, everything we do, all those flooring areas, we've got huge potential. I still think for as old as our business is, we're still a young business that can go a lot further. And as we do acquire additional businesses, the understanding those components and those styles and the products and things we can do with it, that's quite exciting. I'm glad you noticed I'm younger than 150 years old, although
Yes.
some the lines probably. But I think there's a lot of great opportunity out there for us, domestically and globally.
Okay, so now let's go back in time to 1994. You just landed at LAX. You're getting off the plane. I think at that point the smog was starting to clear. That's when I was early in LA. It was still kind of bad in the fall, but it's gotten much better. But like the Mark I'm talking to now magically appears in front of 1994 Mark. What advice do you have for yourself as you get off that plane at LAX?
I've really enjoyed the experience. I've grown. I would do it again. There are many times I look back at some of my buddies who stayed in my hometown that go to the same pub every Saturday night and they're close to family. That's irreplaceable. There's a component of me that go, oh, if I just stayed there, what would have been different, closer to family and parents and everything else. So you give and take, right? I mean, I probably gained more than I've lost, but in a family sense, I probably lost more than I could have gained. So there is no perfect world. There is no perfect solution out there. You make of life what you can. You strive for the best that you can be, and how you can give that back, and you accept what you get. You know, what the time you put in and how much you invest in that is what you earn, and it's well earned.
Keep calm, carry on.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Okay, and then one last question. So let's pretend there's a gaggle of aspiring textile designers out there listening to this. What do you say to them?
I would reach out to us. I'd show an interest. We are always looking for new talent. I am at an age in my life where I am very much more about giving back to students. I learned a lesson from my wife very early on that manufacturers that support students as an investment for our future, those students become loyal future clients, loyal future employees. Those that turn them away at the door and don't allow them in the showroom, don't provide them with samples, you've lost a customer for life. And that's not my customer. That's the person that replaces me. That's the people that come after me in Mohawk. Those are the customers that I'm looking to make sure that we win over future generations.
Mm.
It is not hard to give a little bit back to some students. Just give them a little bit of your time and experience to sort of groom the next generation. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to them.
I agree. Pay it forward. We've all had incredible experiences. So the more we can reach out to the next generation and kind of, I always say, shorten their journey. And it doesn't even need to be like an official, be a mentor in a capacity. Sometimes just a little nudge in a simple conversation pays incredible dividends. It's amazing how much impact you can have from just such small interactions as well.
I get a smile on my face every time that I'm there to help mentor and point them in the right direction. It's a way of reliving my youth.
Wonderful. Mark, this has been so fantastic. Thank you for letting me speak as a idiot with respect to flooring, because I don't understand a lot about it, but I'm just fascinated by all aspects of what we do, and having met you and seen like your rise, and I don't know, it's just, you've always been just a great face and a nice handshake throughout my career as well. So I thank you. I thank you very much for your time.
I appreciate your inviting me onto the show.
Thank you. And also to all of our listeners, from students to people who've been doing it for a long time, if this changed your idea of hospitality or design, or if you think someone could benefit from listening to this, perhaps a textile designer, please pass it to them, send it along. We grow by word of mouth. I appreciate you all so much. And if it wasn't for you guys listening and watching, I wouldn't be here interviewing really cool people like Mark. So thank you very much.